is a riddle and a mystery, mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery, mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery, mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery, mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery, mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery, mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Good morning, everyone, here in our space at Neighborhood Unitarian, those of our friends on Zoom, and members of Lakehead Unitarian Fellowship in Thunder Bay, who are joining us here for our service today. Hello, everyone. My name is Suanne Maziarz. I'm the music director here, and I have the announcements for the coming week. Mike has the announcements. Okay. A message to Lakehead congregants. Your weekly announcements will be sent out in the weekly e-update. Stay tuned. And on to neighborhoods announcements. I opened the service today with STJ 1003, Where Do We Come From? Words inspired by this painting by Paul Gauguin and music by Brian Tate. The lyrics of the song came from the French title of a famous oil painting by Paul Gauguin, created in Tahiti in 97 and 98. It is currently at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. There are three groups of women, and if you go from right to left, it represents the three questions we sang in the painting. The women on the far right with the child represent the beginning of life. Where do we come from? The middle group represent the daily existence of adulthood. What are we? And the old woman in the corner facing death is asking, where are we going? Ongoing activities at neighborhoods. Monday night Spirit Choir continues. If you're interested in singing with our choir, talk to me. We meet weekly from 7 to 9. There's a Wednesday Pilates class. Wednesday mornings at 11 a.m., open to all. Come talk to me for more info about that. And every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m., you're welcome to have tea with the minister. Reverend Pat Trudeau is here in the minister's office hosting a tea chat time. Ongoing activities at neighborhood include the current show in our gallery, Coping, COVID Creations. It will be coming down next Sunday. Please view the work if you haven't yet, and contact artists directly if you would like to purchase any of the art. Artists are asked to make a donation to us from the sales they have made while in our gallery. A new show will begin 2 weeks later. Details will be sent out soon. Our virtual silent auction is live. Check your email for information about how you can view and bid on items. And don't forget, on November 17th at 7 p.m., the 19th at 7 p.m., our Peace and Love celebration happens, as well as final bidding online. There's a workshop after service today with Rev Fred Wooden, who will be speaking in this morning's service. It's from 1 to 3 p.m. Pizza will be provided. It's called 5 Questions Every UU Congregation Should Ask. We had a great turnout for the first in the series 2 weeks ago, and hope everyone will join us again. All are welcome and encouraged to attend. We have a circle singing workshop coming up in the style of Bobby McFerrin, led by Jane Lewis, who's a friend of Neighborhood. That's happening Monday, November 14th from 7 to 9 p.m. Masks will be required for this singing event. You'll be guided to sing and explore your voice in a non-judgmental singing circle. Through the process, you'll practice listening and memory, melody, harmony, rhythm, and body percussion. All levels of singers welcome. The leader will be improvising, and you will have the option to do some improvising of your own or follow along with the others. This is open to all. You can bring a friend too if you'd like. Our Whole Lives UU Lifespan Sexuality Education. Are you interested in becoming an OWL facilitator? Do you want to be able to provide lifespan education based on principles of self-worth, sexual health, justice, and inclusivity? If so, speak with Zoriah after service, or you can email lifespanlearning@nuke@gmail.com. Out of the Cold, our multi-faith partner, East End United, has started up their Out of the Cold program here in our building. Every Friday evening, they provide a hot, nutritious, sit-down dinner, access to a clothing room, and a takeaway lunch. Doors open at 6, and the last admittance at 7:30. For more info, you can check out their page. The website is listed. And know that all these announcements come out in our Monday email. Ways to stay informed. Did you know our website calendar is kept up to date by Hala, our office manager? Contact her if you have an event or an activity, such as a meeting or small group you want to schedule in our space, and she will take care of that for you. Note that all meetings here need to be scheduled in the calendar because we are a very busy building. Can you just flip that back? I think there was one other thing on there for me. Yes, do you get weekly emails from us about activities going on here at Neighborhood? If you would like to be included on that email list with all our events, reach out to Hala at office@nuuc.ca. This week's question to the community. What did you notice the first time you came to a UU service? We're going to have an opportunity to share our reflections on that question during the service and afterwards in breakout rooms. And next Sunday, our theme is memory and meaning. Our speaker is David Belrose from Lakehead, and we will be sharing that service with them as well. They will be providing the music.
Good morning, everyone. Wasn't it windy last night? It was windy where I was, and after 3 hours of raking, what are you going to do? Well, this is it, jump in the leaves. So let's see where the winds bring us today. We welcome you to our neighborhood Unitarian Universalist congregation service. Thank you for joining us here in person and virtually. My name is Deb Bertizon, and it's my pleasure to be your service weaver today. Today, as Suzanne mentioned, it is also such a pleasure to welcome the folks from Lakehead Unitarian Fellowship in Thunder Bay. They'll be participating alongside us in some of our rituals, through Zoom, obviously. So, I've noticed that some of our friends from is it Lakehead or Lakeside? Head, yeah, okay, good, I got it right. From Lakehead have put beside their names LUF, and I would invite everyone to do that who is from Lakehead. Once again, let's take a deep breath together. Now we have nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. So let's bring forth our hearts, minds, spirits, and energy so that they all mingle together as we feel love and gratitude for being with each other. Let's experience that alchemy. This is our threshold moment. Let us enter into sacred space together. Our service begins now. This morning, Neighborhood's Chalice will be lit by Beata, is it Hunert? Beata Hunert. And she'll be lighting our chalice while our friends at Lakehead are also going to light theirs. Over to you, Suzanne.
This morning I'm going to share with you a piano piece by Reverend Jason Shelton, Sicut Servus. And he writes as the subtitle, Psalm 42. As the deer longs for streams of cool water, my soul is longing for you, my God.
Thank you, Suzanne. Today, those present in the NUUC sanctuary have the privilege to gather in Takaranto, traditionally known as Turtle Island. We're on the traditional land and territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Haudenosaunee Nations under Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaty. It is also the home to many other Indigenous nations from across the lands, including the enduring presence of Afro-Indigenous peoples. Our friends from Lakehead live and are gathering today on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe Nation and the traditional territory of the Fort William First Nation, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. We offer gratitude to all of our First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all Indigenous people for their teachings about earth, relations, and community. Now, let's have a look at and introduce our amazing team for today. Our talented music director, Suanne Maziarz, will be leading us in music. Zoriah Getchell, where is she? Oh, over there. Creatively and playfully facilitates our child and caregiver program and will share today's Time for All Ages. And of course, our calm and steady tech folks, and believe me, there's a lot going on today. We have Mike Kowalski on Zoom, we have Reese Rogers on AV support, and let's not forget in Thunder Bay, we have Emily Lazon and she'll be working her magic over there. Our guest speaker today is the Reverend Dr. Fred Wooden, who will be following up on his message and the workshop that he delivered 2 Sundays ago here at Neighborhood. He shared a handy way of defining ourselves and asking, how are we doing? Today, in his message entitled, On the Other Hand, he will provide us with 5 questions so that we can open our minds to decide what is right for us. And yes, for fun, I may just have a few more hand references. I can't stop myself. I hope you can handle it. No, I know. Here at Neighborhood, we are open to many beliefs and learn from many traditions. We welcome all people to our religious community. If you're visiting us for the first time, we give you a special greeting and invite you to stay after service for coffee time, or for Zoomers, the breakout room time. Our service can be different from week to week, and we encourage you to check out several Sundays so that you get a better feel for who we are and what we do. And if you stay for coffee time today, I can assure you that there will be at least a handful of folks who will be happy to tell you more. But for starters, our mission here at Neighborhood is to empower spiritual growth and shared action for the care of the world. Our theme for November is remembrance, memory, experience, and deepening meaning. And today, as I mentioned earlier, we will be moving through that liminal space, that place of unknowing, and pondering what's right for us personally and for our congregations. As I was preparing for this service, I was thinking about, well, how long it's taken me to acknowledge that I need to make a number of changes in my life. You know how it goes. When we resist, it persists. And I resisted for quite a long time. I've been looking at some of my behaviors and habits and can no longer deny that some of them no longer serve me. In fact, some may be actually harmful. Now, these changes that I intend to make have a different quality to them compared with the losses I recently experienced. Those I could not control. After deliberating for a while, I have made a conscious decision to make adjustments and to get some support with follow-through. Before making this choice, though, I kept getting lost in the weeds. I'm aware that a lot will happen. One thing leads to another. A lot of my troubles, well, they're connected. There's that domino effect. And if I try to predict all the shifts that may or may not happen, I know I'll become overwhelmed and freeze. On the other hand, that was for you, Fred. On the other hand, I also know that this chain reaction will impact other blocks that also need to move. I just can't focus on them all at the same time. So here's the plan. I'm going to crawl out of this hole, try to let go, surrender, shed what will shed, and start over. I'm going to take it slow and be mindful of how I feel the emptiness. It'll probably be a similar process to the rebuilding of the Inukshuk that keeps falling in my front yard. Put a stone down, balance, wait, repeat. I have no clue what new Deb is going to look like. I don't know how I'm going to change. I don't know how to do it. Liminal space indeed. But I'm curious though. It's like I'm painting over an old painting. Part of it I might keep, who knows? In some ways, I'm excited to see what's going to show up. And that excitement can certainly live alongside the pain and the discomfort if I don't ignore either of them. So a few things for me to remember as I'm on my journey, and perhaps they will be meaning for you on your journeys as well. First, Shunryu Suzuki says, if your mind is empty, it is always ready for anything. It is open to everything. In beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In expert mind, there are few. An unknown author wrote, you learn nothing from life if you think you're right all the time. I thought that might get a little chuckle from a few folks. And finally, William Baziotes says, each painting has its own way of evolving. When the painting is finished, the subject reveals itself. So now it's time to greet our neighbors. After you've greeted a few neighbors from wherever you are in person, please turn to the cameras and greet those who have joined us virtually. You'll hear a chime to end. Go ahead, folks.
Hello, Ellen. Hello, Yvette. Brenda.
Hi, Dee.
Anissa. Reese. Hello, Phyllis. Good morning.
Hi, Gail.
Hi, Phyllis. Bruce.
Hello, Ellen.
Leanna.
Hi, Bruce, wherever you are.
Edie. Ellen.
Susan.
Hey, Phyllis.
Reese,
Lakehead.
Sarah. Hey, Yvette.
Did you find
Hello.
Lakehead Unitarian congregation, Phyllis?
Yeah, I did. I just didn't want to go watch the Zoom there. I can watch it in my nice warm house.
Absolutely.
Drink a cup of tea. Hi, everyone at Lakehead
Hi, Ellen.
Unitarian.
Hi, Reese, Sarah, Joshua.
Yes, Bruce.
Yeah, hi, Helen.
Hello, Luann. And Faith.
Brenda, Hanusha. Who else we got here? Dee Dee, way up north.
It's snowing. We had snow here too.
Oh,
Must craft in our space and in ourselves the seeds that grow a different kind of life, a life of graciousness, of creative intelligence, a place of life and spirit for ourselves and our families.
I invite everyone to rise in body or in spirit as you're able. We're going to open the service by singing what the Spirit Choir sings every time we meet, which is a song called Here Together by Unitarian David Glasgow. If you haven't heard it before, it's short. We're going to sing it twice through, so you can just listen the first time and grab it the second time. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to invite all of the young and young at heart to come and gather in at the front because it's time for our Time for All Ages. Hi, Cameron. So I want to start our time for today by thanking Rev Fred Wooden, who has come back to talk to us again. Thank you for coming to join us. We really appreciate it. So when we were talking about service this week, Reverend Fred mentioned the importance of seeing things through the eyes of a beginner. That's that idea of being able to decide what something might be able to be before you know what it actually is. And so I thought that we could practice that today with an exercise in creativity and imagination. So I would like you to forget everything that you think you know. I have a few things in my bag here. I'm going to show you part of something, and you can tell me what you think it might be and what you think it might be used for. Sure, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so if you think you know what it is, you can tell me. And if you think you know something that it might do that it maybe isn't what it is, you can tell me. So for starters, we've got this sort of two-sided red handle. What do you think that might be?
Like with like a snowball maker, because like when you clamp it down, it's like there's like a ball and you fill it with snow, and when you clamp it down, it makes it a snowball.
Snowball maker, that's a good guess. Does anybody else have any ideas? Yeah, I see one.
I forgot.
That's all right. Yeah.
A red wrench.
A red wrench. That's also not a bad idea. Part of a slingshot. That's a very good one. Well, I would have to say that you were right. This is a snowball maker. It's got a little ball on the end, and you grab snow with it.
You know what some of these are, but I'm actually not gonna say the answer.
I appreciate that. Now, does anybody have any ideas about what this snowball maker might be able to be used for other than making snowballs?
Jello balls.
Jello balls.
Sandball.
Sandballs.
Play-Doh balls.
If you want to have a snowball fight, you could use them and then throw them at the other person.
That's a good idea, yeah. You know what I think you might be able... Oh, Deb's got one.
A back scratcher.
A back scratcher.
A giant melon baller.
A giant melon baller. Very good. Those are all really good ideas. Let's see about what you might think about our next piece. What do you think this might be, this sort of red and purple knitted fabric?
Could be a scarf.
Could be a scarf.
He got my idea.
Okay, could be a scarf. Did you have one? That's okay.
Maybe a snake that's made out of fabric?
A snake made out of fabric. Maybe you could do me a favor. Take the end of this and pull on it. It keeps going and going. Technically, this is a scarf. But it's about 8 feet long. And I use it to wrap my entire torso and both my arms as an extra layer under my shirt most of the time. That's something that I call my personal thneed because I can see so many different uses for it, and I use it all the time. And for the last thing we have, here.
Dun, dun, dun.
What do you think this might be? Kaya, did you have an idea? You can come and whisper it to me. It looks like a couple of handles that are coming up out of the bag with a bit of a V-neck down the one side.
Maybe it could be a dress or a bag.
Could be a dress or a bag.
I was thinking maybe some type of bag or maybe a fabric-y slingshot.
Or maybe a fabric-y slingshot. Well, this used to be a shirt, but somebody got very creative with it and decided to sew up the bottom and turn it into a bag. Yeah, because they were able to look at it through the eyes of a beginner and see, you know, maybe this could work if I sew it up, and then they did it. And why do you think that kind of practice might be important?
So that you can so that you can see different things through one thing in life.
Good idea, yeah. Does anyone else have any ideas?
Guessing game.
Guessing games, good, good. Well, yes, Gord.
A way to reuse something that you don't use the old way anymore.
Very good, very good. Well, I think it's important for all of those reasons, and also because it keeps us adaptable and strong in our own minds. And it's a practice that I hope all of you can continue and keep doing, because I find it really useful for our own creativity. So that's our time for All Ages today. Thank you very much, and we can go back to our program now.
Mike, could you pull up the lyrics, please? Oh, gathered here to celebrate my spirit's burning low. Instead of serving, now I wait the breath of worship's not too late. Breathe glad the embers glow. There have been losses on the way, a parent, partner, friend. At times I need to grieve and say I have enough to bear today. Be near and help me mend. The stillness strips the masks away, exposes lonely hearts. Self-pity must not have its way. I'll live my life from day to day, and now the healing starts.
Those are wonderful words, aren't they? And I say that because the music came from the words. I'm a bad composer that occasionally does a good thing. And I'm just letting you know that when we were creating the hymn book back in the 1980s, before candles of joy and sorrow had become commonplace, there were a lot of people sitting in congregations, our congregations, UU congregations, where we're always happy and upbeat, who weren't feeling happy and upbeat. And we needed some hymns that acknowledged that sadness is a valid part of being alive, that loss is a profound state, spiritually important, that we don't always have to feel good to be worthy of being part of a community. So we had 2 or 3 tunes that are just like, that had that quality to it. But we had no, shall we say, tender tunes. They were all happy, which is why I ended up writing that tune and another one and another one. So if you run into a sad song in the hymn book, chances are I wrote it. In fact, I sometimes say that I should have had business cards printed up that say, dirges are us. But it is time for meditation. For some of you, that word prayer may still be significant, but it is a pausing and a listening place. And while I cannot see our friends at Lakehead Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, I'm thinking they're right at the tip of Lake Superior. And you're right on the edge of Lake Erie. Ontario, excuse me. And we came across the Blue Water Bridge and looked out onto Lake Huron. We lived 30 miles, 45 minutes from Lake Michigan. Poor Lake Erie didn't get any credit this time. And we who live in Michigan, my wife and my son and my grandson and I, we remember that in Michigan we say 4 out of 5 lakes prefer Michigan. But my point is we're surrounded by water. And I want us to think about the waters that are in your life now, actual, virtual, figurative, literal. Being close to water is powerful, consequential. It is both a source of power in nature and a reminder that all things flow, come from the waters and return to the waters. There's a book that ends, what is it? Wonderful book about Norman MacLean and his sons, called A River Runs Through It, talking about how the ancestors lived like pebbles at the bottom of the river as the river of time flows across it. Or you put your feet in the sand and you feel the water, and it can be so cold in the spring and so refreshingly warm in the summer. And how the horizon vanishes into the sky when you're looking out over the wide waters of a great lake or the ocean. Or how the pleasure of turning on the tap and putting your hand under the water and you can feel it passing over your knuckles. Or the stepping into a bath and slowly becoming part of the temperature. We live surrounded by waters. And our time of prayer and meditation is to feel the waters within us. Aren't we supposed to be 96% water? And feel them passing across us, through us, around us, knowing that the life we have today started in the waters. And everything that gives life flows like water. And even in death, as we dissolve into the earth, the waters give us back to the world. Whatever your sadness, it too will dissolve. The waters will carry it where it needs to go and carry you with it. The sadness is part of the color, the shape of the wave, the sound of it lapping against the shore. There is beauty in your sadness and your loss and your pain and your sorrow, just as there is beauty in the joy and hope and gladness. And on that we stop right now to give pause and gratitude that here we may yet be surrounded by waters. On that we pray.
So let's just take a moment or two in silence and experience our feelings and see what comes up in that liminal space. And I'll bring you back after when it's time. And slowly, when you're ready, you can open your eyes, bring yourself back to the rooms that you're in. When you're ready. All right, now it's a pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, who we've actually already met. But for those of you who are not here 2 Sundays ago, and let me say this, I have to hand it to him. I know, I knew you were waiting for another one. He certainly got us thinking. Rev Fred is a mostly retired UU clergy person who has served small and large, rural and urban, southern and northern, UU and non-UU congregations since he was ordained in 1980. He also grew up UU, experiencing 4 other UU congregations along the way. In addition to that, he has been a newspaper columnist, radio host, political candidate, composer of hymn tunes, like the one that we just heard for the Gray Hymnal, and most recently, author, sharing an account of one of his pilgrim journeys along the Shinto path in Japan back in 2014. I think we're going to be hearing a little bit about that. These days, he consults with congregations like Neighborhood, plays with his 16-month-old grandchild, tries to weed his garden, read books that he should have read in the seminary, got that right this time, and has completed 2 additional publications, all readily available on Amazon. So let's wave our hands in the air to welcome Rev Fred.
All right. I talk with my hands, so I'm not going to hold the microphone. In fact, at least one person, perhaps my wife, had said, if you tied my hands behind me, I'd be unable to talk. At this point, if you were in any one of the congregations I served, the service would be over. Great seeing you. We're all done. No. The hour of worship is literally an hour for a lot of congregations. It's an assumption that's buried in the hearts of many a worshiper and many a congregation. And I'm going to come upon some of those assumptions later. But first, I'm here to say thank you, not only for your checks, which I love very much, but I have you to thank for a lot of what I've done in my life. And that's a bit of an exaggeration, not you personally. I mean Canada, more specifically Montreal, and most specifically at Expo 67. You may recall from the last time I was here, if you were here, that my first trip out of the USA was to Expo 67. I was 14 and I was utterly transfixed by it all. The metro alone was a marvel. I'd never been on a subway, and this one ran on rubber tires that whined wonderfully. Our apartment for the week was in a place called Octagon Park, way north and full of people who didn't understand a word of Petit Anglais. And it was so French that we barely knew each other. I prized my official passport to the show. It said passport right on it. And every time you went into a pavilion, you got a stamp. I was a world traveler. And I went into every one of them. Few memories are as vivid as that week I spent. I can still remember the song from your pavilion, Ontario. You remember it too, how cool. Oh, yes. I Googled it up just to be sure. Yes, that week awakened in me a desire to see the world. But it was 1997, 30 years later, before I actually left North America, got on an airplane and crossed the Atlantic. Before that, though, I did explore North America with my family. I rode out to Montana by rail and camped in those woods up there in the Bitterroot, very near where Norman Maclean wrote that book. I rode a private railroad car on the Canadian National from Toronto to Jasper. I discovered and fell in love with your capital city, which is one of the best cities I've ever been in, Ottawa. So much so I convinced my son to get his university education there and is a graduate with honors from Carleton University. When we lived down in Austin, Texas, we made the drive to General Assembly in Calgary, going all the way up the Rocky Mountains through Glacier National Park. We even took a day trip to Lake Louise with our 11-month-old, 10-month-old in a stroller. And there's a story I can't even begin to get into, but it was memorable. Let me put it that way. We went, in that time, I went on my first visits to Florida, the Puget Sound in California. And like I said, it was 1997 before I made it across the ocean and visited parts of Europe. Since that first trip in 97, I have been to 20 countries in all. And what makes me do this? Thank Expo for making me want to do that. And of course, that could be a book or two all by itself, each of these journeys, which you can be assured I will be writing, and yes, they will be available on Amazon. But my point is to say that at some point I wanted to engage the world beyond the world I knew. And what does that have to do with you? Well, last time, for those who were here and for our friends in Thunder Bay, which town I have not visited, and I owe them a visit, I offered this community a handful of ways, remember, to be used like ancient carpenters used to measure by using their hand width or span or elbow to arm cubits and spans. Call them rules of thumb that you can use to look at your religious community and say, who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? This time I'm bringing more concrete questions for all of these people here and maybe my friends up there in Thunder Bay. Concrete questions that I'll be asking, and I'll mention them in specific at the very end of this message. But I want you to know that this time I'm going to be putting difficult challenges to you and also to me. And I will share them in depth later on. But every time I've traveled, this is the point I want you to take home today. I've had to engage that new place I've been on its own terms. When you arrive in a new place, everything that's there is in some way different from where you've been. Let's take subways, for example. I got on the Montreal Metro, had no idea how to do it. When the doors open, you get on, do you wait? What do you do? How do you buy a ticket? Just compare subways. For example, the tube in London works entirely different from the subway in New York, from the elevated in Chicago. I spent 10 minutes trying to figure out the kiosk of the subway in the Toronto Transit. How much is a single ride? The machine won't tell you. You have to buy a card and fill it up. How much is a ride? The machine won't tell you. But I had the same experience in Paris or in Prague or in Rome. I was in Delhi, and they have a machine there too, and it's in English, and it took a stranger to show me how to use it. What is obvious to you for your system, for me, if I were living in New York, to everyone in their town was obscure to me. And I felt so stupid that I didn't know this. And then I flipped the script. I was the lucky one because they stopped noticing all the things that were flooding in on me, the aromas, the sounds, the colors, the shapes. You see, when you're used to a place, you put most of it in the background. You're just focused on where you're going, what you're doing. You may or may not notice the other people on the subway or the bus or even on the street because you know where you're going. But when you're brand new, it's all right in front of you. Every bit of it. You're reading all the signs, trying to figure it all out, especially if it's in a different language. This is a gift. It's an often embarrassing and disorienting gift, but it is what I prize most about travel. It is what Japanese Zen calls shoshin. You referred to it earlier, and she referred to it because I told her to. What we sometimes call the beginner's mind, which is described, and I'm quoting now, as an attitude of openness, eagerness, a lack of preconceptions, as a beginner would. That's what a new place does to me. And more than that, it gives the gift back in return, because when I come back home, I have adapted to where I've been, and now home looks different than it did before. I'm now seeing it through the eyes of Peru or Zimbabwe or India or Toronto. My hope today is to create for you moments of shoshin, of beginnersness, of beginningness about your congregation, and hope that our friends up in Thunder Bay can do the same thing, to take you beyond the familiar for just a moment, to do what T.S. Eliot put so well in his poetry, which is, at the end of our exploring, and the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know it for the first time. Because you have to leave a place to recognize it for what it is when you come back. Now, that's a bit extravagant, but I hope to lead you closer to that. Well, we cannot go someplace physically different right now. And mind you, I'm in a different place, so I'm noticing everything around me, the pictures up in the gallery, the hangings there, the fun lighting fixtures you have in here. I'm looking at those folks up in Thunder Bay and saying, I wish I could see the whole room and just get a sense of their place. We can invite Shoshin in figurative ways. The first is to share some of my spiritual sojourn and how it changed my sense of being UU. I have worshiped in dozens of other communities that are non-UU, and each one invited me to be different than what I was before. My second hope is to kindle in you your own inner toddler. That is to say, I don't care how old you are, you're still 2 years old if you get an opportunity, and you love it. I'm thinking now of my grandson who's 18 months old, or very nearly 16 months old, and watching him is fascinating because he makes no assumptions about how the world is supposed to work. Food is not just for eating. It's for squishing and touching and throwing and dropping. He tastes things that are not food, to the despair of his mother and the terror of his grandfather. He combines toys that don't go together and finds out that they kind of do. And he plays with things that aren't toys. Aside from being very funny, which he is, and he enjoys making us laugh about as much as anything, he makes me think about what he is thinking, to see the world through his eyes. His is a truly beginner's mind. After all, he is a beginner. We all have that. Even now, we all have a toddler inside us that's available if we have the nerve to let it out. So, let me give you some examples from my life as I tried to become a better UU. I visited lots of UU communities, especially when I was in seminary, and they varied, all of them. But we all learned essentially as visitors here, there, and everywhere that most worship services look pretty much the same, as they should, because you want to know what's going on. But now and then I'd encounter one that was so different, I did not know how to deal with it. As a student minister in the Boston area, I went to the oldest Unitarian congregation in Boston, which is called King's Chapel. It's called that because it was the official and only and much resented Anglican church in a Puritan town. And the irony is that when all the Anglicans fled during the War of Rebellion south of your border, those who were behind were the liberal Anglicans, and they decided they'd rather be Unitarian Anglicans. And so they just changed the Book of Common Prayer and took out all the Trinitarian references, and that's what they still use. They are Christian Unitarians. So I had to go worship there. This is my people, are they not? And I got there and it was Communion Sunday. And if you took communion, you went down the aisle and you knelt down and someone handed you the wafer and you drank from the cup. And I said, am I UU enough to do this too? I wouldn't have done it in another Christian church. But I did it there, and it was profound. Because I found that I could legitimately listen to that voice of my faith, that flavor, that tune, and understand that I was connected to this in some way. It took me out of what I thought I knew to a place of not knowing, to the beginner's mind. Let me make sure I've got my notes correctly. So years later, I'm visiting a seminary friend, a fellow graduate, but he's not a UU. He is a Shinto priest. Believe it or not, there are liberal Shinto. He officiated at our wedding, Wendy and me, so we can say quite literally that we were married by a Shinto priest. In his church in Los Angeles, I go to his service. They say the prayers they say in Japanese and then in English. I learned to say that I am praying to Chenchi Kani no Kami, the principal parent of the universe, neither male nor female. This is Japanese, mind you. And that after the service, people go up to a little window, and there they do something like confession. It's called Toritsuge, where they ask Tenshi Kani no Kami to help them in the coming days. And they hand him a little envelope with money, and that's his only pay, is what people hand him through the window. Could I live like that? Could I do worship like that? No, but it invited me to see my own compensation differently and to see financial support differently, to see prayer differently. In 1999, my father died rather suddenly. And like you, I lit a candle for his death, but I needed more. And I conduct worship. There was nothing I could do in my worship for my grief. My rabbi friend said, "Come on over." Because you see, at the end of every Jewish service, the last prayer, one that's repeated several times through the service, is said by those in grief. Literally, the worship cannot end until the mourners have led the last prayer. Grief is the way we leave worship, and not in a sad way. It is solemn, it is deep, it is a pause. And I was invited to stand and help say Kaddish for my father, which made a great difference in my life. I had to see religion through their eyes to get there. Yes, there's lots of God language, but you know, it isn't about the words, it's about what do they mean to the person saying them. I can't say it all without the prayer book in front of me, but every time I say it, I think of my father, my mother, the sons I buried, and they live in me when I grieve in worship. Something we don't do. And then at every synagogue service, we put the Sifrei Torah, the scrolls, back in the Aron HaKodesh, that cabinet, and we sing a song that we only know by ear because there are never any instruments and the cantor leads us in it. We sing, "Etz Hayim Hi," she is a tree of life for those who hold her close. What a great image is that, to hold close to the tree of life. And we sing it in spontaneous and bad harmony. But we do it with great feeling. I have sat Zen in the Mother Temple of Japan. I've worn a turban in Sikh worship. I've attended Salat many times, been swept up in Simchat Torah parties on the streets of Brooklyn, observed the bodies burning alongside the Ganges River. I've had my forehead swept by a Shaivite priest. Now add the year I ran for office, when I found myself going to Black and Latino churches all over Grand Rapids and learned there's a whole other world out there. AME Baptist and Pentecostal and Missionary Baptist. My son, we sent him to a Catholic high school, long story. But that meant we went to Mass from time to time. And my son can still say the Our Father in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Latin. My older son went to Quaker high school. We learned to sit in silent worship. I've been offered the holy bread of Greek Orthodox churches after communion, but they love you to eat it anyway. And I've attended the funeral of a locally famous megachurch pastor and found myself surrounded by people with whom I have nothing in common, and yet their grief was there and so was mine. In each I saw something different from my own world. I was obliged to be in their world, to accept it as their world, and that it was legitimate and real and powerful. The Dutch religious scholar Gerardus Veranderley, who said, if you go to someone in Africa or Asia and they tell you that the world is a great feathered serpent riding on the back of a turtle, you must be willing to believe it for a moment to understand any of it. And he is right. You have to be able to walk into another house of worship and be with them as they are in that house of worship and not saying, well, I don't believe that, or I wouldn't do that. If you want the beginner's mind, you have to be in their world as they are and accept that. We talk about inclusivity a lot, but this is a tough reach for us. At the AME Church, for example, you are told to bring your tithes and offerings down to the front so everyone can see who's giving and who's not. In the Pentecostal church, prayer goes on for 20 minutes. And in the middle of it, people stand up and say, my son got out of prison, and people cheer. Or I found a $20 bill and I was able to buy groceries this week. And none of those would happen in a UU church, I just about guarantee. They also do altar calls. You know what an altar call is, don't you? Altar call is when you've moved them so much, you say, come down in front and confess and become a Christian. And in black churches, there are deacons lined up along the front, and each one of them is ready to get you into heaven today. And I might not approve of that, but there was honesty in that. Money never appears in a synagogue on the Sabbath. Don't even think about it. Vegetarian lunch is served every week among Sikhs. Don't even ask for a hamburger. You never wear a shoe into a masjid or a Sikh temple. You cover your heads in Sikh temples, masjids, and synagogues, and neither Sikhs nor Muslims sit on their chairs, but they have beautiful carpets. All these experiences made me wonder if the way we worship, the way we educate, the way we organize could be different if we wanted them. There are no assumptions that have to pertain. We used to, as I told you at the beginning, we should do worship in 60 minutes. If you're not done in 60 minutes, you're not playing the game right. And yet, it's going to be 90. We should sing only hymns and no songs. We should take an offering. We shouldn't take an offering. You must. Going back to my metaphor of the hand, I've come up with 5 questions that I think every UU congregation should ask. There are actually more, but I have to stick with the same image, you know. One of them you've already started to answer. The second one you're going to have to answer. The first one is, do you need a building to be a community? For hundreds of congregations, when you ask what church do they go to, they point to a spot. And that's what they think of. Do you need clergy? For hundreds of UU congregations, that isn't the case. Are they just second class? Do we need to worship this way? Are there other ways we can be UU and worship? Do we need committees? The laughter tells me this is a valid question. Here's the tough one. Do we need money? There are others. I could ask you about, do we need children? And if the answer is yes, the question is why? In every case, why? Do we need to do social justice? Of course. Why? There are lots of basic questions we just skip over, assuming that they're already legitimate. What I want you to do, and some of you will stick around and we'll do some of this, not nearly enough, is to cultivate the beginner's mind about everything you do. Stand back and say, if I were brand new here today, what community would I behold? Try to take yourself out of your own community, walk back into it and say, what is it here that says it's Unitarian Universalist or not? Everyone, when they responded earlier when you had that little feedback. No one mentioned theology. No one mentioned worship. No one mentioned social action. They all mentioned people. Now ask yourself, what is it that makes a community a community? And how can it express itself authentically in this place, in this time, in the way that gives you life and hope? Among my favorite aphorisms is one from Robert Kennedy from years ago. Some see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not? We have the gift of doing that if we allow ourselves to do it, which doesn't mean throw it away. It means what you have may be perfect, but know it's perfect. Decide it's perfect. Own it like it's perfect. Know why. And keep wondering even so. That's what I hope for you in your future. And we'll do a little more this afternoon. But in this liminal space between where we were and where we will be, in this congregation between your clergy, in Thunder Bay between where you've been and where you're going, this is a moment when you can step outside of who you are and imagine all the things that could be. And all of those things are worth wondering. At least I think so. For some of you in this room, I'll see you soon. For those in Thunder Bay, I'm so glad to have a face and a place to talk about. And thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts with you this morning. Be well.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and paving a path for us to think differently. And thank you, Rev Fred. So now is the time for our offertory. Yes, we still do that. This congregation is a living entity, and like all living things, it must have nurture and sustenance. If you contribute financially by pre-authorized withdrawals, through the baskets, or through the online donation link, we thank you. As we give to the life of this community, we can affirm our lives within it and receive so much more. So greeters, please bring the baskets to the front after you have collected, and we will now pause and listen to Suzanne play. Thank you for asking. Lakehead does their offering differently. They have a basket at the back that people contribute to at the end of their service. If you have found love and acceptance here, if you have found home here, if you have known kindred spirits here, let this offering be a token of gratitude for our common life and to build the common good. Suzanne.
I invite our congregations to join me in song and spirit for our closing hymn. Though I may speak with bravest fire, may inward love guide our every deed.
All right. I invite you to sing together as Beata extinguishes the NUUC challenge.
Extinguish the challenge.
Oh, chalice, chalice. Yeah.
No pressure.
It's a challenge, as we saw last week. And of course, our friends from LAC will be extinguishing theirs as well. Oh my gosh, I'm getting tired. What did I put? LAC. LUF. Yeah. Today, I will leave you with this thought from Hungarian biochemist and 1937 Nobel Prize winner, Albert Szent-Györgyi. A discovery is said to be an accident, meeting a prepared mind. So our question for the community, we've talked about it, it'll appear in your chats if you're choosing to stay and join either for coffee time or for in the chat rooms. So as is our tradition here at Neighborhood, let's connect by joining hands or linking arms or touching elbows, whatever feels comfortable with consent. And if you have a free hand, because sometimes we can't reach, feel free to put hand on heart. And then after I give the final blessing, please also turn to our friends on Zoom, and we'll put our hands together and say namaste, which means I salute the spirit within you. So, our final blessing. May we all leave today with courage and strength and confidence, preparing our minds to be open to amazing accidental discoveries, letting go of the need to be right, and seeking what today's finished paintings will reveal. Our service is ended. Go in peace.